Hi, so Marc Lowe in Tokyo, and I wasn't planning at all on doing a talk tonight. I was practicing my keyboard, and I was going to do some new sound recordings, and I'm just sitting here after I took a bath and, had some ideas in my head, and it's my daughter there, from 2021 when I met her, and I'm just thinking about this idea of language and identification. I guess you could say like identification with one's language, one's culture, and with other concepts around that, such as, like one's hobbies, say, or family, or, the kinds of friends one has, what one does, whether it's a job or a career, that's a big part of it, or also, I said hobbies, like I make music, I'm a musician, or I'm a teacher, or I'm American, or I'm Japanese, or I'm half this or half that, or blah, blah, whatever it is. And thinking about also intellectuals in particular, because, or people who are engaging intellectually in some way. When I say intellectual, I don't mean necessarily someone who is working at a university or studying at a university, or graduate school. I don't mean it this way per se, but people who kind of think and intellectualize and use the intellect as a tool to parse, to cut, to analyze things. And for example, so we have all this garbage thrown at us every day on SNS. YouTube is one. I look at my YouTube feed now. I have a YouTube subscription as a, premium whatever. And by the way, they're raising the price. So I may actually unsubscribe because I don't have that much money to throw around with it. And like the thing is here though, I look at my YouTube feed right now. So the algorithm it's feeding me, for example, I looked at some videos on this, what is a Sigma male, right? And I did this talk on Sigma males. So now I look at my feed every day, I get this Sigma males or this and that and that and the other. I don't care, actually. It was like, I sort of like, something with that clicked. I watched a few videos and I kind of got it and moved on from it. But like the algorithm hasn't moved on from it and keeps feeding me this. Or I get Jordan Peterson, for example. I haven't like clicked on Jordan Peterson talk in months, at least. I mean, or if I have, it's like I click on it and I listen to a few minutes and I'm like, okay, I get it and I've had enough. Or, whatever it is. And before I was watching lots of news, I was watching news from Hindustan Times and We on these channels from India. And I was getting all of those in my feed. Well, the algorithm has changed and now it's not giving me those in the feed anymore because I guess I haven't been obsessively watching them anymore. I've been trying to distance myself a bit because it was, worming itself into my brain too much, and I felt like I needed to take a break. So now the algorithm's sort of giving me a break from that, but it's giving me this other stuff that maybe I clicked on. Anyway, it's all kind of BS. And actually, when I look at my front page now, it's like all garbage, basically. I mean, sometimes some music things that maybe I clicked on, like I listen to some artists like 9 Inch Nails or IMX or whatever, because I'm doing this Dark Shroud. I'm listening to some electronica, maybe for inspiration, or I want to hear that song again. And so maybe I get that in my feed. So that's okay, whatever. But SNS, not just YouTube, Facebook, Twitter is now X, right? And Instagram still owned by Meta, which is Facebook, which is Mark Zuckerberg. Now Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg are talking about getting into the ring, having a wrestling match to prove their manhood, kind of. Really, it's stupid, very childish. And I mean, Elon Musk is a genius. He's a genius. He did this, that, the other, SpaceX, blah, blah. He's a big child man. I mean, he's just, and so is Zuckerberg and all these rich guys. I mean, this is what people are aspiring to? Where's Einstein? Where's Tesla? Not the company, but the man, right? These guys were not, they maybe had money because they won awards and they got, they were able to make a living from their inventions or their, they end up being sort of, or Edison, right? Edison Labs, I mean, they had some business aspects were able to do that to some degree. But, I mean, Einstein was a true philanthropist. I mean, and he was, he's quoted as like, I'm happiest when I'm alone, making music. I think he played the violin or something, like, playing my violin or playing my instrument like that. That's the happiest time. I don't need to be, getting recognition and people like, praising me and buying me drinks and stuff. And so, but like, the people that were all, not all, but if you look at social media, the people who are being sort of like touted as these kind of geniuses, what Neuralink, right? I'm going to get chips implanted into your brain so that they can then do Big Brother directly or something, Anyway, going back to the original theme I wanted to talk about, which I was going to do a talk tonight. You can see I'm holding the phone. I don't even have it on the stand. And I had like 38% battery. So it won't be too long, this talk. But what I was thinking about is that we're all confined within the limits of our language and our culture. And that language and culture are very strongly linked. When I speak in English, like I'm doing tonight on purpose, and I'm not going to subtitle this in Japanese, but I speak, two languages fluently. English is my native language, obviously, and then Japanese is my second language, obviously. But I've gotten deeply into it enough, not only the language, but the culture, and to realize, living here for years and years, over 25, 6, 7 years now, and I did spend some time in the US in between, studying, graduate school, etc. And I was married at the time to a Japanese woman who also had the flip side of her own speaking English and the kind of American culture part of her brain. She was actually friends or people we knew would say, she's more American than you, you're more Japanese than she is. Doesn't matter. But see, that's all identification. And precisely my point. Language, culture, they attach to each other. Just as we attach ourselves to concepts around I'm a musician, or I'm a teacher, or I work for X company, or I'm a father, or I'm a husband, or a wife, or a this or that. And we identify. And then through that identification, we then cling to that so strongly, so tenaciously, that when someone contradicts something that we believe, such as our religion, such as our creed, such as our this, that, the other, don't touch my Bible, my flag. I shouldn't get into religion too much because it's really touchy, right? But I'm not so much talking about religion per se. It's just one thing. I mean, or race, language, again, career, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm not a this, I'm not a that, I believe this, I don't believe that. That gets us into trouble. But beyond all those things, and not just talking about, that we might get into trouble in terms of conflict with other people, that we get into fights, or that we get into wars, as we're doing, as humans always do. And yesterday was August 6th, getting to that, right? I recorded, I come and stand at every door, and that was just totally, I was walking home. I was home most of the day. I went out, and when I was coming home, so I was grading all day, it's August 6th, it's the anniversary of, it's the date that marks the bombing of Hiroshima in 1945, and I thought, oh my, and then it popped into my head, I come and stand at every door, which was this protest song with lyrics from, I think were written in Turkish originally, and then was it the Birds, I think, did it, and then, This Mortal Coil did it. That was the version I first heard, the female vocals. Then I just thought, oh, you know what? That song popped in my head. I listened to it a few times and listened to a few of the different versions. So Pete Seeger also did it. I wasn't familiar with that, and I listened to that. And then I thought, I'm gonna do this. And I picked up the guitar, the acoustic, and I was like, I don't know. It was getting late at night. I didn't have time to arrange it, and didn't want to play the guitar at night. And I thought, I'm just gonna sing it a cappella. Lit a candle, put this iPhone on my stand, and did it. And I had the chimes from a few days prior that I had filmed, and thought I was going to use that sound for something else in the video. So that was it, a cappella with the chimes. Anyway, so war, right? This is how this comes up. So why were the bombs dropped on Hiroshima? And I was listening to a guy talking about the film Oppenheimer, which they're not showing in Japan because it's so sensitive. That Hollywood kind of left some things out, that it was an anti-war movie, but that it left some things out. And that, Oppenheimer himself was I guess, pushing for dropping the bomb when Japan maybe was going to surrender, and maybe they didn't need to drop 2 bombs to show their might and their power. Maybe it's because they built the bomb to drop on Germany to have some way to oppose Hitler's Germany. But then Hitler and Germany surrendered, and then America's still at war with Japan. So okay, we'll drop the bombs in Japan. And so the narrative goes that they had to, and that otherwise there would have been too much bloody fighting, and Japan would have taken over the world, etc. And so that was for democracy and freedom and blah blah. But again, ideologies and sticking to this. But this isn't even what my talk is supposed to be about. What I was thinking is part of it. It's all part of it. Is you identify with language, with culture, with career, with family, with all these things. And obviously, I'm not saying that. Obviously, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, to love your family, I love my daughter, or to love your friends, to love even your nationality, your community, that's okay. But if you identify so strongly with it that anything that opposes it thereby creates conflict, this is a problem, right? And beyond this, getting even more sort of philosophical, is at the root of Homo sapiens. What are we? Are we just a collection? And I've talked about this. I mean, Buddhism, Hinduism, you think about shamanic cultures before even, because Buddhism is 2,500 plus years old, and before that kind of, right, the so-called Hinduism or Hindu, is it religion? I mean, there's religious aspects, but like the core of the philosophy, right? These things, or Stoicism, or whatever, Western equivalents maybe. Forget the so-called spiritual, quasi-spiritual, metaphysical parts of them. Is just that, like, fundamentally, our egos, our personalities, these alliances, what are they? They're a conglomeration, a agglutination, a mass of these language, culture, and identification elements that if you drop all of them away, what's left? Right? And this is what the Buddhists say. This is what the Hindus say. This is what, right? This is not an original thought. It's not original. It can't be original because it's a fundamental thing, right? So what's there? So if I speak English, if I speak this way, I'm limited by my language and the culture that attaches to the language that comes with this, that attaches to the language that comes from the culture. If I speak in Japanese, if I did this exact same talk in Japanese, it would be different. It would be a different talk. I would be saying different things in a different way. If I then translated them, I then have to interpret them and put them into another language that approximates the Japanese, or vice versa if I put Japanese subtitles. Because culture and language stick to each other. In Japanese, people say yoroshiku onegai shimasu. How do you translate it? If you're watching this and you know Japanese, you know how hard that is to translate. I can't translate it. It's what you say to someone when you want them to, please give me your attention or your favor, something like that. But we don't say this in English that way. Or otsukare sama deshita. We don't say this in English. It's like my textbook when I first started studying Japanese, you must be tired. We don't say that. It doesn't mean that. It's like, thanks for your hard work. It is something like that, but it's not exactly that, right? So that's a cultural thing. And it's like a set phrase that Japanese people say to each other after they finish work or something. But we don't say this in English the same way, right? Or before we eat in Japan, we say, itadakimasu. We don't say that. And it's not religious, like putting your hands together and saying a prayer for the food or thank you for this food. It's not the same. So it's culture. It sticks to the language. You take the language away, you take the culture away, you take all these things away. What's left of you, that's your identification with the language, with the culture, with those things, being a musician, blah, 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 as I said. When you find it impossible to accept the opposite opinion or idea or language or culture or whatever it is, then you get into trouble and you get into conflicts, right? But if you drop everything away, what's left? And this goes into Buddhism or Hinduism or no ism. Take the isms away of those two. I listen these days to a lot of Jiddu Krishnamurti, J. Krishnamurti. He's you listen to him, I mean, he's got the entrappings, you could say, of his culture, that he's born a Hindu or born into, that culture in India. And so obviously that was his background, but you listen to what he says and he's like, don't follow religion, don't follow gurus or spiritual leaders. They'll all lead you down the wrong path, because you have to realize things for yourself, and that you have to have a quiet mind and throw all the cultural junk away, your language, everything, every last bit, and become nothing, essentially. Which doesn't mean it's not nihilistic, it's not giving up yourself, like the good aspects of yourself, or your originality, your creativity, what makes you you, so to speak. It's that you're just dropping all that stuff away and just being present without all the filters. And that includes likes and dislikes, past, present, this, that. That doesn't mean that those things go away and that you throw everything away and you become this like empty shell. That's kind of nihilism, or maybe that's giving up on life. That's not at all what he's saying, and that's not at all what the message of that is. But again, language, culture, they stick to each other, and then all these concepts. And so, going back to this intellectual persons who dissect with the intellect, cut things and look at them and peel them away. The language used, including the language in the brain that's used, even if they're not saying, people are not saying this with the mouth like I'm doing now, even just thinking about it, it's all limited to the language that we have, the culture that we have, the concepts that we understand intellectually. It's not reality. And so, this is where we get into trouble, right? Does that make sense? I was just thinking about this, and then I decided to make this talk, which not many people maybe will understand, but that's okay. Because it's not an intellectual argument, actually, at all. It's not something that needs to be understood intellectually, actually. Just being present, because when one dies, where do the thoughts go? Where do the memories go? Where do the labels go? Where does the language go? Where does the culture you had go? Where does all this, I'm a musician, I'm a this, I'm a that? It's gone, isn't it? It may remain behind with the people who are alive, and that's another subject, right? Like, if people remember you, are you still alive, kind of thing. Like, we keep people alive through our memories, yeah, okay, but how about that person, him or herself? Where is he or she, and where are those labels and those things? It's the interpretation of others that keeps those, the memory and the interpretation of the memory, etc., that keeps them alive in some way, but they're not alive in the same way, right? Those things are gone. That person no longer is actually physically present. So where did those things go? They can live on others' memories, but what happens when those people go? What happens when the earth is gone? When either we blow ourselves the fuck up, excuse my language, or, just naturally over time, the human race becomes extinct, or the earth is, gone, right, in the galaxy. So what are you? What am I? Who are we? Obviously, we have personalities, we have likes and dislikes, we have individual taste and talents and things we're good at, not good at, etc. But is that really, take away the language, the culture, all those things? You even a certain part of the brain goes missing, or, you poke it with something and the person's personality completely changes, or they start speaking languages they never knew before. How does that work? Think about that. It's kind of scary, and it's kind of not. It's kind of hopeful, because we're going to die, right? So maybe we're just part of this greater thing that isn't really about us in the end. I mean, it is in a way. I'm doing this talk, and this is me talking and talking about thoughts that I'm having. But after I'm gone, this video may remain, but where am I? Where was I when I was saying these things? I'll end on that note. It's almost 20 minutes. My 38% is probably down to 28% or 32, or who knows. I can't see it now. All right, I was going to do music stuff, and I'm doing a talk instead, and I practiced today and getting ready for some shows coming up, some video work, and some other stuff. And it's fun, and it's great, and this is what life is for me. Not insisting that I'm this or that or the other, that my music is this or that or the other, and the genre of no genre. Good night. Thanks. No subtitles in Japanese. Deal with it. See you. Marc Lowe.